Hey guys, it's Mrs. Houchin here with today's Bible lesson. If you have your Bibles, I'm going to be reading through Daniel chapter 2, a lot of it, or another good place is BibleGateway.com, or you can just listen to it as I read it. First of all, to recap what you read about yesterday, Daniel and his friends, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, all decided that they were not going to eat the king's meat. And the person in charge of them, the prince of the eunuchs, was afraid that he would get in trouble if the king found out. So Daniel and his friends said, "Let us just try this for 10 days. We will eat vegetables and drink water and see what happens." And in 10 days, they were 10 times as healthy and strong as the ones who had eaten the best stuff from the king. So it just shows that God blessed them for doing what was right. And probably the reason that they could not eat the king's meat is because the Jewish laws had very strict rules about what the Jews could eat and what they could drink. And probably it was not in line with those laws. So they wanted to obey God's commandments, and God blessed them for doing that. So now we're going to take a look at Nebuchadnezzar's dream. In Daniel chapter 2, Nebuchadnezzar, the leader of the Babylons, has a dream and he wants to know what the meaning of the dream is. But it's actually more than that. So reading from Daniel chapter 2, it says, "In the second year of the reign of Nebuchadnezzar, Nebuchadnezzar had dreams. His spirit was troubled and his sleep left him. Then the king commanded that the magicians, the enchanters, the sorcerers, and the Chaldeans be summoned to tell the king his dreams. So they came in and stood before the king. And the king said to them, I had a dream, and my spirit is troubled to know the dream." Then the Chaldeans said to the king in Aramaic, that's the language that they spoke, "O king, live forever. Tell us your servants the dream, and we will show the interpretation." The king answered and said to the Chaldeans, "The word from me is firm. If you do not make known to me the dream and its interpretation, you shall be torn limb from limb, and your houses laid in ruins." So the thing here is that Nebuchadnezzar didn't remember the dream. You ever have a dream and you wake up and you wish you could remember it, or either you're maybe glad that you can't remember it because it was something scary or something sad? Nebuchadnezzar doesn't remember his dream. So he not only wants all of these magicians, sorcerers, to tell him what his dream meant, he doesn't even remember what the dream was. And he expects them to just come up with it. Or he's going to tear them from limb to limb. If we were in Bible class, probably Mrs. Patnode would have a couple kids acting this out. Not going to take any volunteers right now. Then he goes on, I'm in verse 6. "If you show me the dream and its interpretation, you shall receive from me gifts and rewards and great honor. Therefore show me the dream and its interpretation." They answered a second time and said, "Let the king tell his servants the dream, and we will show its interpretation." The king answered and said, "I know with certainty that you are trying to gain time, because you see that the word from me is firm. If you do not make the dream known to me, there is but one sentence for you." So again, the servants are trying to say, "Tell us what the dream is." And Nebuchadnezzar thinks that they're just trying to buy more time. He says, "You're trying to gain time." And again, he's very frustrated with them that they can't just think up what his dream was. So if we skip down to verse 10, the Chaldeans answered the king and said, "There is not a man on earth who can meet the king's demand, for no great and powerful king has asked such a thing of any magician or enchanter or Chaldean." Basically, they're saying that we can't tell you what your dream was. We weren't in your mind. There's no way that we could do this. So in verse 12, "Because of this, the king was angry and very furious, and commanded that all the wise men of Babylon be destroyed. So the decree went out, and the wise men were about to be killed, and just in the nick of time, they sought Daniel and his companions to kill them." Because remember, they're part of the wise men, because they had proven themselves over the 3 years that they had been there. Then Daniel replied with prudence, that means wisdom, and discretion to Arioch, the captain of the king's guard, "Why is the decree of the king so urgent? Arioch made the matter known to Daniel, and Daniel requested the king to appoint a time that he might show the interpretation to the king. So all the wise men are about to be killed, including Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and Daniel says, wait, let me talk to the king and see if I can figure this out. Before he goes to the king, in verse 17, Daniel is going to do something very important, and that is that he is going to pray. He is going to ask his friends to pray for him, and he is going to pray that God will give him wisdom and that God will show him, because only God could do it. Only God could tell someone what a dream was and what it means when the king doesn't even remember what his dream was. So Daniel's prayer is in verse 20 through 23. I'm just going to read verse 23. It says, "To you, O God of my fathers, I give thanks and praise, for you have given me wisdom and might, and have now made known to me what we asked of you, for you have made known to us the king's matter." So first of all, if you read the whole prayer, he asks God to give him wisdom, and then you can see that God reveals it to him, and he thanks God for giving him this wisdom. And he tells the captain of the guard, Arioch, he says, take me to the king, don't kill the wise men, because I know what it's all about now. So Arioch, verse 25, brought in Daniel before the king in haste and said thus to him, I have found among the exiles from Judah, that's Daniel's and his friends, a man who will make known the interpretation. The king declared to Daniel, whose name was Belshazzar, his Babylonian name was Belshazzar, are you able to make known to me the dream that I have seen and its interpretation? Daniel answered the king and said, no wise men, enchanters, magicians, or astrologers can show to the king the mystery that the king has asked. But there is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries, and he has made known to King Nebuchadnezzar what will be in the latter days. Your dream and the visions of your head as you lay in bed are these. And then he goes on to describe to the king what the dream was. And I'm just going to summarize it because it's a lot of details. But if you read in verse 31 to the end of the chapter, all the way down to about verse 45, it describes this statue, this mighty, bright statue made of gold and silver and bronze. And so there's this huge statue which represents Nebuchadnezzar. And the statue is cut down and destroyed by lots of various means. So basically Nebuchadnezzar's dream was prophesying that the fall of his kingdom, that other kingdoms that were not as great as his would come in and destroy his kingdom. And Daniel is able to reveal to Nebuchadnezzar, this is what you dreamed about, a statue cut down, and this it was what it means. And then in verse 46, then King Nebuchadnezzar fell on his face and paid homage, that would be like honor, to Daniel. And the king answered and said to Daniel, truly, your God is God of gods and the Lord of kings, a revealer of mysteries, for you have been able to reveal this mystery. Then the king gave Daniel high honors and many great gifts and made him ruler over the whole province of Babylon and chief prefect over all the wise men of Babylon. Daniel made a request of the king, and he appointed Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego over the affairs of the province of Babylon. But Daniel remained at the king's court. So because Daniel had wisdom to say to the guard, let me talk to the king, and he had wisdom to go to his friends and ask them to pray for him, and to go to God and say, God, please give me wisdom, and to thank God for revealing him the mystery of this dream. Daniel was able to tell Nebuchadnezzar the dream and receive great honor in the land of Babylon. So that basically sums up the first two chapters of Daniel, and we will get into more in this next week. Tomorrow we are going to have Soap with Mrs. Patnode. So I hope you all are doing well, and I miss you guys. Bye.